A firing squad, a gas chamber, hanging, electrocution, and the lethal injection are the methods used in a capital punishment case in the United States. This measure is legal in 31 U.S. states, and there are currently 3,002 inmates awaiting execution on death row.
It involves the taking of a human life. This is the most serious act that the government can do towards its citizens, and if it makes a mistake, it's irrevocable. So it impinges on people's moral viewpoints, on their human rights viewpoints.
A great portion of the controversy is caused by the large amount of wrongfully convicted persons who have been sentenced to death row and have been exonerated. Since 1973, there have been 155 death row exonerations nationwide.
In some of those cases, it's because biological evidence was available that could subsequently exonerate them. But in the vast majority of homicide cases, biological evidence isn't available. It's only available in about 10% of homicide cases. So what does that mean for the other 90% of cases where that kind of evidence isn't even available to demonstrate their innocence?
There is no proof which reflects that capital punishment reduces crime rates. In fact, numbers show the complete opposite.
Evidence of deterrence, by and large, shows that the death penalty is not a deterrent to crime. I mean, if it were, you wouldn't see the highest rates of murder and homicide in states and in localities that have the death penalty. And you wouldn't see higher rates of homicides in states that have the death penalty versus states that don't have the death penalty.
There have been 225 executions in the past 5 years, which have amounted to millions spent on prisoners. Experts argue that the resources being used to finance the death row cases could be used to fight crime more effectively.
This is a 15-year process. So a death penalty case is costing $3 million per death sentence, whereas sentencing somebody to life imprisonment, including the 40 years they'd be in prison, or however long their whole life takes, is more like $1 million. Expensive, but it's 3 times as expensive if you carry out a death sentence.
Since 1976, 294 African-American defendants have been executed for the murders of a white victim, while only 31 Caucasians have been executed for murdering an African-American.
We have a high percentage, over 40% of the people on death row are African-American. Another 13% are Hispanic. So the majority of people on death row are from minorities.
The lack of appropriate counsel for prisoners on death row is a factor that adds to the violation of human rights. Lawyers argue that the resources available to defendants are far less than those available to the prosecution.
Often, lawyers are not paid at rates that would ensure that they receive competent representation. Often those lawyers, once they're appointed, they have to go to the court, the trial court that this case is going to be in front of, in order to get additional resources like an investigator of their own or some sort of mitigation assistance or an expert.
There are still many concerns about the living conditions of death row inmates during the period leading up to their execution. Of the 31 states which currently have the death penalty, at least 25 of them hold these prisoners in solitary confinement for 23 hours or more a day.